Afternoon to everybody and welcome. It's great to see so many names and faces joining us in 2021. How exciting. Our very first PPMA Sparkle and Learn webinar for the year. It seems ages since I last connected out there with you all in the world of PPMA land, and it's great to see you. And I hope you all had a good festive time and ready to start the year with a great sense of energy and hope. And I can't think of a better way to kick off our new series than to be joined by our good PPMA friend, Alistair Williams. Alistair, a very good afternoon and a very warm welcome to you.
Well, thank you for having me, Lethan. I'm really pleased actually somebody's here today because I've got 3 kids in the house, all on PCs, supposedly working hard. So I know what the challenges are for everybody. But yeah, how are you doing, Lethan?
I'm doing great, thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's here in Shoreham by Sea. I've got to say, it's. I thought it was freezing cold, and I've just been in touch with my sister who lives in Durham, and she sent me down pictures, and she's got 12 inches of snow, and she's just waiting for somebody to come and dig her out because she's stuck in. So it's kind of made me feel great. The sun's shining here, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to the session with you.
Oh, and, fantastic.
Today it's all about kind of personal branding, isn't it?
It is. It's all about personal branding.
It was fantastic to have Alistair with us last year as part of our Peer into the Future Aspiring HR Director program. And we did a specific session. So we thought it would be great just to kind of start the new year with that sense of personal reflections on yourself and give some indication around why personal branding is success. But before we kick off with the session, I wanted to ask you 2 questions. I'm putting you on the spot here.
Oh, yes.
One reflection back in terms of what gave you great joy from last year, and what hope do you have for the year ahead?
Last year was an interesting year for me because I'd just finished working for Vogue and Condé Nast, and if I'm blunt with you, I was pretty burnt out. So I took it easy on myself last year. I had these great plans to launch outdoor events in March of last year. The timing couldn't have been any better. But the reflection of what I took from last year actually was how lucky we are to live where we are and being able in these British Isles to access nature relatively easily. So I spent a lot of time walking and going out into the woods and watching the seasons change, or float around in the tiny little front garden and notice all the wildflowers growing up. And I absolutely love that. That for me kept me sane when the times were hard. And the hopes for next year, or this year even, well, I'd like to see a nice, clean US presidency emerge once again. You know, very topical, I guess. More personally, I'd like to hope that the children around us, particularly in this house and all around, just keep going as their brilliant, resilient selves. And on a personal basis, I want to do more of the type of work that I've been doing more recently around personal branding and just empowering people to be able to be the best versions of themselves.
Great. Well, I shall look forward to finding out how the year goes for you. And with no further ado, tell us a little bit in terms of why personal branding is important and what is it all about?
Okay, so personal, I have to come clean on this. Personal branding has so many different sort of connotations, doesn't it? It's, for me, it's not about being a sort of Instagram influencer. It's not about having the latest TikTok videos. Personal branding is coming to the point of view by understanding that actually everybody has a personal brand. We all have one, whether we like it or not. And it's important because it allows people to make sense of you and for you to be able to be present in the best version of yourselves for the rest of the world. I guess it's worth actually trying to explain what I mean by personal branding. Is that a good start?
Yeah.
I think I've always had a career in branding of one way or another, working for organisations like The Guardian or Condé Nast or Vogue. And that's always been about managing how they tell their story. It's about managing how they tell people about themselves. And I think if you were to define the word brand, for me, it's it's not just what something does, but it's how it does it and how it makes you feel. And an essential element of any brand is whether or not it delivers on its brand promise, on its expectation. And that brand promise is exactly that. It's about managing expectations and perceptions. And if I give an example of Marmite, we all know Marmite, okay? Now, Marmite has the courage to be disliked. They're absolutely upfront about it. You either love it or you hate it. But they've warned you, and they've warned you that they're not going to change the recipe, or they haven't tried to pretend that it's not strong flavored. They haven't tried to dress it up as something that it isn't. So when you buy it, when you taste it, when you experience it for the first time, you know what to expect. And you tend to do absolutely that, love it or hate it. But by goodness, you have an expectation and you have a perception, and that's been well managed up front. Now, personal branding is exactly the same, because quite simply, as I say, everyone has a personal brand. Human nature is all about making perceptions and judgments, and hundreds of thousands of different neurons firing and analysing all the data that's coming through your eyes, your ears, your nose. And it's all about making sense of things. And whether we like it or not, all these things are making sense of us and how we're perceived. Everything we do, everything we say, everything we don't say, our body language, what we produce, what we write about, it all sends out messages that are absorbed and interpreted by others. Now, these perceptions are actually both practical and emotional. And most of the time, they're filling in lots of gaps where information isn't readily available. Now, personal branding is all about putting things out there to help manage the perception up front. A bit like Marmite, but for human beings. So it's not about creating persona or making yourself an Instagram influencer, as I said, but it's about helping you to understand what you stand for and helping you manage the perception of others about you. It's about taking control about how you talk about yourself, about how you talk about your life. That's the first step. And if nothing else, it helps you answer that question of what do you do? Your response in the first part is filling in those gaps. So by starting to manage your personal brand, you can plan and put out there how you describe yourself, what subjects you want to talk about, what you share. These become all the elements that build the picture, allowing others to understand you better. But I also think, most importantly, it's not just about you. And as an audience of HR professionals and very altruistic and thinking of others, why keep your amazing talents to yourself on the one hand, but why not help others to understand you, how you tend to work, how you like to do things, what's important to you and what you value? And I think there's a certain duty of all of us to actually think about how we manage this to make it easier for ourselves and for other people.
So when you did some work with our Peer into the Future cohort last year, Alistair, we had maybe 3 hours or so with them over 3 weeks, but it was amazing from my point of view, just watching the individuals develop in a very short period of time, and also the feedback that we got from the participants in terms of how it helped them really improve their self-confidence. So how do you kind of go about discovering the issue of your personal brand and what makes us?
Yeah. Do you know what I think the secret is? Is that by developing an approach and framing it around marketing and innovation, which is my area of expertise, and applying exactly the same sort of thought process and approaches that you would to a brand, it somehow depersonalizes what is very, very personal. So once the context changes, once individuals can actually say, oh gosh, well, I'm not very comfortable about talking about what I'm really good at, and I'm certainly not that comfortable about talking about what I'm worried about, and when did I last talk about my values and so on? If you frame it in such a way that you say, look, forget about yourself for a moment, even though this is all about you, but forget about yourself and think of yourself as a brand, and work within these frameworks and with these structures and with these templates And if nothing else, you'll learn how to launch a brand, and hopefully that brand is yourself. That allows people to relax a little bit, relax into it. And I think that's the key of my approach, because I'm not a neuropsychologist, I'm a marketeer, but I apply these principles that I've used for myself and for my teams at the time at the Guardian or at Vogue or at Condé Nast. When we're launching a brand, we apply it exactly the same way when we talk about ourselves as a team, and actually it allows people to open up.
So how would I go about kind of discovering this? Can you share with us any kind of hints or tips, or is there a little technique or a taster about this?
Yeah, I think a really good starting point, and one that we do in the lessons, and the first thing I do when I do these sort of walking sessions I work with quite a lot of senior leaders, and we do sort of walks around the hills and we talk it out in nature. But one of the most easy ways to sort of get things kicked off, and please try this yourself, is ask yourself 3 simple questions, or I'll ask 3 simple questions. You've got a pen handy, jot it down. Let's see where we go. So the first question is, and I'm going to give you 5 seconds to do this. Write down 2 things that you're absolutely brilliant at. Done? Next question. Write down something that would surprise people. Final question. Write down what you might like to change about yourself. Now, have you done that?
Gosh, that's really tough, isn't it? Gosh, I'm probably still at question 1.
So the question I tend to ask people is, and I give them more than 5 seconds, but the question I ask them is, how did you find that? Which of those 3 questions did you find easy? Which did you find difficult? And the clue, if you listen to yourself, the clue about how you approach this whole area is in how you respond to those questions. Because some people actually, they love to tell people something, a bit of a secret, the second question. They actually quite like that. Others absolutely shy away from that. The first question, actually, what you're brilliant at. I deal with all sorts of organizations. I deal with stockbrokers and banks. They're really good at telling people what they're really, really good at, believe me. And they're far less good at the final question about what they may want to change or what they may want to do differently. The beauty of this actually can be sort of encapsulated in a little tool, and if you look it up on the web, it's called the Johari window. And the Johari window is a 4 square that you can fill in that allows you to understand how comfortable you are with sharing, in first instance, things about yourself. And secondly, how aware you are of what you know about yourself. Now, have a look at that at some point. But the first point that we always use when we kick off is to try and say, look, if we're trying to communicate things about ourselves, how comfortable are we doing so? How comfortable are we about receiving feedback and listening to others? And how comfortable are we packaging that all up together in a way that actually allows you to turn up present, complete and whole as a full version of yourself who you want to be, rather than turning up as yourself as somebody that you think you should be or what your boss wants you to be. And that's the very, very first point. Now, I think the second question we could all try. Should we give this a go?
Yeah.
The second question, I think, is all around trying to collate different things. So when we do this course, we go through four phases, really. The one is around discovery, so thinking deeply and trying to understand what it is that makes you you. Then we do a bit of definition, so defining it and playing with it and seeing how it feels coming out of our mouth or written down in paper, and try it out with different audiences. Then we communicate it. And then finally, we commit to sort of some continuity, what we're going to do differently and how we're going to act and take this out into the world. But the first part around sort of this discovery is we follow a number of broad questions. And we'll do them quickly now, but the first thing to think about is, if we think about ourselves beyond the job title, what is it? What do I actually produce? Not what do I do, but what do I produce? What's the impact of what I do? So if I give an example of what's the bloke who gives tickets to cars? A traffic warden. If you give an example of a traffic warden, on the face of it, what they actually do is they write out tickets and book cars and things like that. What they actually produce is they allow traffic to flow. They allow emergency vehicles to pass freely through areas, and if you take it to its further reaches, you can actually say, in some respects, theirs is a life-saving role. And I encourage people in the first instance to think about what it is that they actually do. What's their impact? So what do you do? What's your impact? Then think about, what are your super skills? What is it that you're really, really good at? What do friends or colleagues come to you for? Now, if you're an accountant, that's really, really easy, okay? But if you're an HR professional or you're a leader, what do they really come to you for? What is it that you can do that others can't do? And actually, they are really difficult questions, which is why I tend to set homework in advance of the course to get people thinking about it, to get the juices flowing, and then actually get them to revisit it. And then during the sessions, get them to talk it out with colleagues. Now, if you've done that bit, that's the hardest question. Let's run through some very simple questions in addition to that. If you've done that, who is impacted by what you do? Okay, so who, in terms of what you produce and what you impact, who's impacted? And then have a little think about your style. So how do you go about doing what you do? Okay, what's your approach? What words do you use to describe this? I'm careful, I'm considered, I'm effervescent, I'm energetic, I'm approachable, I'm quiet. And then some big questions. Why do you do what you do? What do you value? Those big questions. It could be that I value creativity, I value openness. But why do you really do what you do? And so what you've done already is you've built up this picture of different elements, almost like in a marketing terms, a mood board, an ideas board about elements that make you you, not just what you do and how you do it, and you'll have your job title in there probably, but how you approach these things, why you approach these things, and what's important to you, what you value. And then what I ask everybody to do is think about, okay, with that in mind, what might be holding you back? If personal branding is all about being the best possible version of yourself and being able to answer that fundamental question of what is it that I want to be known for, taking all of those elements, is there something that may be holding you back? Now, I can give an example about myself. I received feedback a number of years ago when I thought I was being quite straight and forthright and honest, but that can be interpreted completely differently as coming across as slightly overbearing, as slightly too honest, as slightly uncaring. And these are things that I felt were holding me back. So I could address it and answer it and change to a point, but also acknowledge that in some respects, I can get hugely excited about things. I can almost come across as a little bit overbearing. So I can warn people about this. I can warn people about this up front. Okay, you've got all of those things. And then what's the goal here? What is your goal? What do you want? What's the short-term aim? What's the longer-term aim? Is it professional? Is it personal? Now, if you've been writing along and thinking along and coming up with some ideas about all of this, you will probably be asking yourself some questions. Yeah, that's all very well, Al, but you know, who am I writing this for? Who actually needs to know? And I can't see all of your faces in gallery screen, but if any of you are writing this and thinking that, and thinking with a particular audience in mind, you might have started writing these things out and thought, but who am I writing this for? And then if you're writing it along the lines and you think of, yes, but what's the point? What do I do with this? What do I want people to understand from this? Then actually, I've succeeded in this last 5 minutes, because what you've done is you've started to think like a marketeer, okay? So we say that the essence of a personal brand is all about collating what it is that makes you you, allows you to turn up whole as the wonderful version of yourself that you are, and think about what impact you want to make and who you want to influence. And that's a good starting point for any of this, I think, Lethan.
No, I love that. What do you think is the benefit for somebody spending time and effort kind of thinking this through and kind of creating, you know, clarity about the brand? What's going to be different from me if I do it compared to not doing it then?
So I've worked with, I launched these courses at the end of 2019 and ran them throughout the year. And I ran them for lots of different people. And I'll talk about individuals first of all. Individuals, on the whole, tend not to spend too much time on themselves. We tend to be in the industry of serving others or serving our employer. But if we can actually pause in the first instance, and this personal branding is all about having a firm foundation. If we can pause and think about what's important to us, what are we all about, what do we want from life and our career, and then really think long and hard about what it is that we offer, then actually it's a life, it's the first step on a life well lived. The feedback I get from individuals is that it inspires confidence. It creates an opportunity to have their voices heard. And it gives them this huge feeling of confidence that to say, look, this is important to me. You know, this is important to me. No one's really asked me about this, but I'm going to tell people. So if you tell people that, you know, part of what I'm interested in is, and part of what I'm committed to is, you know, equality, diversity of ideas, then you won't find people making inappropriate jokes around you anymore. And if you've been around people who've been speaking like that, you're thinking, why the hell haven't I taken this opportunity to actually tell people what I'm all about in the very first instance? So on the individual basis, it allows people to find their voice and find confidence. For some of the senior leaders I work with, you know, they use it to have difficult conversations with other board members, very much based on a marketing principle of what do I want to say, what do I want to be known for, and what do I want the outcome to be. I've worked with a CEO of a pharmaceutical company who wants to be known for a particular niche area that even I don't understand, but we could work and plan on how he became known as that particular person, how his personal brand was aligned with that particular theme and topic. But I also get real joy out of when it's people going through sort of career transition. So I've worked with a designer, a digital designer, who always wants to be a children's book illustrator. I'm so pleased that in October she had a book published. She had a book published, it's absolutely fantastic, and she's got a publishing deal for a number more books. But that's not me doing the work, that's her doing the work and following some of the approaches that we talked about, but having that confidence to take that first step. I think I'm talking loads. I'm really sorry, Lethan, but I'm really excited by this.
No, I mean, it's great. And what a bit of the feedback that we got from our delegates from the peer cohort last year is that it really enabled them to speak with a little bit more excitement and passion when somebody asked at their interview, you know, what is it that you do, or what do you aspire to be, you know, in terms of the job that you're applying for. And they had a really positive and powerful ready-made answer for that, which was a little bit more than the run-of-the-mill answer that you may give, or the stumbling, because as you say, we all struggle sometimes to talk very openly and positively and confidently about what we do bring to the table. And of course, if you're going in for that job promotion, ideally you're bringing something positive to the team, and you should be aware of that and very confident and proud of it, and not really kind of hiding behind it. So that for me was a big takeaway, really encouraging and enabling people to think and refine it. Because I also liked the reference that you were making in terms of encouraging people to reflect upon it. So you set some homework, you bring it in, you go away and refine it and come back to it. And I also take inspiration from your own brand, because I really like what you write on your website about what you do and what you're all about. So I'm just going to kind of give that as a little task to people listening into the program to check out your website.
Well, maybe I should send the correct web address. I've got two businesses. I've got Creation Consultancy, which is all about launching startups, and actually the work I do on personal brand for startups and owners of businesses absolutely rates this. And I've also got a clear path ahead. And that's just went live yesterday, so I'll send that address out to everybody. I think the other thing that I didn't touch on is I do lots of work with teams, and the beauty of doing the workshop in teams is that it gives individuals a voice within that team, which allows greater sort of team dynamic, cohesion and understanding. And that leads to a question I've just seen pop up from Sarah France Gorton, which
it's really interesting question, isn't it?
I think that and yes, Sarah, I'll absolutely send those things to you. But Sarah's saying I've got two people on my team. One's viewed extremely high performing, one more viewed as a safe pair of hands. In truth, the impact, success, and performance is the opposite way around. It's really tangible. Can you share the questions you've had in written form? Yes, absolutely, I can. But this workshop works really, really well because it allows the people who might be less outspoken to find their voice and be heard within a team environment. And the beauty of teams is the best teams are diverse teams where people bring different things to the party. And if you have a team where only the loudest voice is heard all of the time, this personal brand workshop actually encourages and sort of facilitates people to talk freely about what's important to them and for other people to hear what's important to them. And you find these groups going off and say, but no, you're really, really good at that. Why don't you talk about that more? And it's so empowering and effervescent and amazing.
And this subject's got a real strong connection with a couple of webinars we did in the autumn series, one which was about purpose. What's the purpose of your team and what value do you add and bring to the business? Which is why I really like this approach when you're looking at kind of that service offer for your team. And also we've got Catherine on the call today, Catherine Waddington, who was talking about compassion. And of course, compassionate leadership is all about encouraging that diversity, being able as a leader to have those different voices coming at you, which of course can sometimes be very uncomfortable for leaders to listen to, especially when you're kind of out of your comfort zone, and embracing that very openly. So I'm sure we could go on for a lot longer, and it just gives a real flavor and a taste of why this is so important to the HR profession, but leaders and everyone out there in the world of PPMA who is interested in this kind of activity. And what we are going to be doing over the coming months is putting on an event which you can attend as a PPMA member. Alistair will be running an open workshop, so we'll do some promotion of the dates. So it'll be probably the back end of February into March. And also for those who have signed up to Peer into the Future, Alistair will be delivering one of our sessions in the Peer program about personal branding and connecting it all into that kind of preparation for their next career shift and change. So really look forward to that. Thank you, Alistair, so much for joining, and also all of our kind of listeners and viewers today. Thank you so much for joining the session. And this is, as I said, the first of what we have got lined up as a series of webinars. Primarily, we're going to be hosting them on a Friday afternoon at 12 o'clock. But watch out next week, because it's the closing date for anyone who's interested in Peer into the Future 2021. So please make sure that you or your colleagues get your applications in for that program. And also on the 20th of January, we're going to be launching PPMA Awards. So you'll be very welcome to join us there and give the opportunity for you and your teams to highlight and showcase just the amazing added value you're bringing to your organization, all part of this kind of subject of personal branding, and being prepared to celebrate and announce to the world just what great stuff you're doing. So thank you to everybody out there. Alistair, a big thanks as ever for joining us and giving us your time. Go well and stay safe, everybody. And thank you so much for all of the great work that you're doing on behalf of your local communities. And I look forward to seeing you at a future program. And you take care.